It was my 39th birthday. The day I meticulously orchestrated the downfall of every soul who had betrayed me. Before that day, my life was a tapestry of deliberate successes and quiet contentment. As a compliance director at Meridian Enterprises, I navigated the intricate world of financial regulations with an almost surgical precision, a skill that had earned me respect and a comfortable, elegant life in Manhattan. My marriage to Cody, a charming and ambitious man, felt like the perfect complement, a sanctuary against the city's relentless pace. Then came the summons. An urgent, unexpected email from Anastasia Blackwood, my boss and Meridian's formidable CEO, demanding my presence in her office. The message itself was innocuous, mentioning a critical discussion about my role, but a prickle of unease snaked its way up my spine. The air in the executive suite felt unusually thick, heavy with unspoken things. I pushed open the frosted glass door to Anastasia's opulent office, expecting her alone, perhaps with a legal team. Instead, the sight that greeted me froze the blood in my veins. Cody, my husband of 10 years, was seated casually on Anastasia's plush sofa, a half-empty coffee mug on the table beside him. He wore the kind of rumpled, comfortable clothes he usually reserved for weekends at home. Anastasia, impeccably dressed as always, sat opposite him, a predatory smile playing on her lips, and Cody's left hand, resting on his knee, was bare. The polished gold band, my wedding ring, was conspicuously absent. Their eyes met mine. Anastasia's held a fleeting flicker of triumph, quickly veiled. Cody's, however, was a kaleidoscope of guilt, fear, and a desperate, pathetic plea for understanding. He muttered something about restructuring my department, but the words were a hollow echo against the deafening silence in my mind. The truth, cold and sharp as a surgeon's blade, plunged deep into my gut. This wasn't about work. This was about them. My perfect life, my secure marriage, my trust, all shattered in a single gut-wrenching moment. It wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy, a calculated dismantling of my world. And judging by the casual ease in that room, my own family was likely an accomplice. Anastasia, with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, gestured towards the adjoining conference room. There, seated around a long, polished mahogany table, were Eleanor, William, and Patricia Cody's entire immediate family. Their faces, usually animated with forced warmth at family gatherings, were now masks of composed indifference, barely acknowledging my entry. My mother-in-law Eleanor, ever the matriarch of performative grief, offered a flimsy, "Oh, Sierra, darling, what a difficult day." Her eyes, however, were devoid of genuine concern, only a calculating pity. William, my father-in-law, simply nodded curtly, his gaze sweeping over me as if I were a particularly inconvenient piece of office furniture. In that sterile room, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, memories of countless Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, and summer barbecues flickered through my mind like a dying reel, their laughter, their stories, their embraces all now tainted, revealed as charades performed for their own cynical gain. The smiles, the I love yous, the shared confidences felt like daggers, twisted by the revelation that every interaction was built on a foundation of deceit. Cody, finally finding his voice, began to speak, his tone a bizarre blend of apology and corporate jargon. He stammered through an explanation, trying to frame the restructuring of my role as a necessary step for Meridian, a move beneficial to all parties involved. But then he started weaving in details about the Hawthorne family holdings, their struggling real estate ventures, and how Anastasia's visionary leadership was offering them an invaluable opportunity for synergy. He spoke of leveraging internal resources and strategic realignment, corporate euphemisms that, to my trained ear, screamed of illicit financial arrangements. It became chillingly clear. My position was being eliminated, not for performance, but to create a vacuum that the Hawthorns, through Anastasia, could exploit. My career, my future, was a bargaining chip in their desperate game to save their failing business. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. The initial seismic shock had given way to a terrifyingly lucid clarity. My voice, when I finally spoke, was barely a whisper. I understand. I rose slowly, the room seeming to tilt around me, yet my steps were steady. I walked past their expectant, slightly smug faces past Cody, who looked as if he wanted to reach out but dared not. As the heavy door clicked shut behind me, isolating me from their collective deceit, a new sensation began to bloom in my chest. It was cold, hard, and utterly devoid of mercy. The shattered pieces of my trust were coalescing, not into despair, but into an unbreakable resolve. The weight of knowing that this betrayal wasn't a sudden, impulsive act, but a slow, calculated conspiracy orchestrated by my own family, people I had loved and trusted for years, settled deep within my bones. They hadn't just stood by. They had actively participated, driven by greed, sacrificing my happiness and integrity for their own financial survival. For months, they had looked me in the eye, shared meals, and pretended affection, all while knowing their serpent was coiled in my sanctuary, poised to strike. And in that moment, as I walked away, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They had awoken a force they would regret unleashing. The city outside was a blur of yellow cabs and indifferent faces, a stark contrast to the earthquake that had just ripped through my private world. I made my way back to the apartment Cody and I had shared for years, each step feeling heavier than the last. The key, once a symbol of shared sanctuary, now felt alien in my hand. Opening the door, the familiar scent of his cologne, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the framed photos of our smiling faces on the mantelpiece, everything suddenly felt tainted, a grotesque mockery of a life that was never truly ours. This was no longer home. It was a museum of a lie, and every object screamed of his betrayal. A wave of nausea washed over me, a physical manifestation of the raw pain and despair that threatened to consume me. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to curl up in a ball and surrender to the crushing weight of it all, to weep until there were no tears left, to scream until my voice broke. But then, a cold, sharp clarity pierced through the haze. This wasn't the first time I'd faced a formidable opponent, nor the first intricate problem I'd had to dissect and dismantle. My professional life as a compliance director had forged me into a strategist, a meticulous investigator of irregularities, a relentless pursuer of truth buried under layers of deception. This was a crisis, yes, but it was also a case, and my training kicked in, overriding the emotional devastation with the steely logic of a battle plan. I wouldn't break down, I would build. I wouldn't crumble. I would construct an unassailable case. My dignity, my reputation, my entire future, they were not theirs to take. They were mine to reclaim. Piece by methodical piece, the path to exposure and justice began not with tears, but with a decision. I would turn their meticulously planned betrayal into their meticulously orchestrated downfall. My spare bedroom, usually a repository for forgotten books and exercise equipment, became my new command center. I cleared the antique writing desk, setting up a new, pristine laptop and a stack of crisp legal pads. The silence of the room was punctuated only by the soft click of the keyboard as I began to organize my thoughts. This was my war room, where every detail, every interaction, every suspicious document would be meticulously catalogued. A silent promise echoed in the quiet space. Asterisk. You underestimated me. You thought I was weak. You were wrong. Asterisk. My first steps were cold, calculated, and professional. I began by methodically reviewing my own employment contract with Meridian Enterprises, searching for any clauses that might bind or restrict me. Then, I pulled up Meridian's comprehensive code of conduct, internal policies, and the stringent regulatory guidelines I had helped implement. Their rules would be my weapons. Next, I initiated a discreet deep dive into the public records of Hawthorne Family Holdings, cross-referencing their business licenses, real estate portfolios, and any publicly available financial statements. Every irregularity, every deviation from ethical practice, every whisper of impropriety would be my starting point. The hunt had begun, and I was armed with a precision that would soon make them regret ever stirring the beast within. My initial deep dive into public records and company policies had revealed the structural vulnerabilities, the pathways they intended to exploit. But to truly prove how they exploited them, I needed something more granular, something from within Meridian's secure digital archives. Accessing such sensitive internal data without raising immediate alarms would be impossible for me, given my sudden transition out of my role. I needed an ally, someone discreet, observant, and implicitly loyal. My thoughts immediately turned to Marcus. Marcus had been my assistant for 5 years. A quiet, observant man with an almost preternatural ability to anticipate my needs, he possessed a sharp mind, a keen eye for detail, and, crucially, a quiet disdain for the corporate games played at Meridian. We'd navigated complex compliance audits together, and he'd witnessed firsthand my unwavering commitment to ethical practice. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a shared sense of professional integrity that made him the only person I could trust. He wasn't one for gossip, but his subtle eye rolls whenever Anastasia's name came up, or the way he'd carefully filter Cody's emails for me even before the affair, spoke volumes. He implicitly understood the undercurrents of power and deceit that flowed through Meridian's executive ranks. I called him into my war room, my spare bedroom now transformed into a command center under the pretext of organizing my files for my impending transition. His expression, usually so composed, held a flicker of something I recognized: shared discomfort, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity and injustice of my situation. I could tell he knew something was deeply wrong, even if he didn't know the full extent of the betrayal. My requests were carefully phrased, designed to sound like a final, meticulous handover of my compliance duties. "Marcus," I began, my voice steady, "I need to ensure everything is perfectly in order before I officially step down. Could you please pull all of Anastasia Blackwood's internal meeting schedules for the past year? Her travel logs, including flight details and hotel bookings, and cross-reference those with any client entertainment expenses filed under her department, particularly those with unusual locations or high-value items." He didn't ask questions. He simply nodded, his eyes holding a knowing glint. "Right away, Sierra." Within days, my war room was filled with printouts and digital files, meticulously organized by Marcus. I pored over every document, my eyes scanning for patterns, anomalies. It wasn't long before the red flags began to unfurl. Anastasia's business trips, particularly those to secluded resorts or private islands, consistently overlapped with client meetings Cody had supposedly attended. Expense reports showed exorbitant dinners and private jet charters billed as corporate development or vendor relations, often with only Anastasia and a single guest listed, no name, just a blank. The digital breadcrumbs were there, carefully scattered, designed to look legitimate, but revealing their illicit path upon closer inspection. They had deliberately anonymized some expenses, buried others under layers of vague descriptors, making them difficult to flag in a routine audit. But my trained eye knew what to look for, and Marcus's access had brought me the raw data. The realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. The affair wasn't merely a personal betrayal. It was deeply intertwined with corporate malfeasance. Anastasia wasn't just using her position for illicit romance. She was weaponizing Meridian's resources, its funds, its very integrity, to facilitate a corrupt scheme that directly benefited herself and the Hawthorns. This wasn't just about a cheating husband. It was about an elaborate network of fraud, funded by the very company I had sworn to protect. The thrill of the hunt became an intoxicating rush, a dark satisfaction as I confirmed my suspicions. Finding the undeniable, irrefutable first hard evidence, the digital footprints were no longer faint whispers. They were loud, damning declarations, etched into Meridian servers, waiting for me to connect the dots. and I was connecting them, one by precise, vengeful step. While Marcus's digital trails were undeniably damning, exposing the intertwined personal and corporate malfeasance, they painted only a superficial picture of the financial architecture supporting their deceit. The expense reports and travel logs pointed to illicit activity, but they didn't reveal the true depth of the financial manipulation, the shell corporations, or the hidden accounts. To truly unravel the labyrinth of their greed, to understand the times, how times and times where times of the money laundering, I needed a specialist, someone who spoke the arcane language of numbers with fluent precision. My mind immediately went to Linda Garrison. Linda, a brilliant forensic accountant, was a legend in the world of corporate investigations. I'd worked with her on a complex regulatory audit years ago, and her ability to trace a single misplaced cent through a multi-billion-dollar corporation was nothing short of artistry. She operated with the quiet efficiency of a ghost, leaving no digital or paper trace of her inquiries. I reached out to her through an encrypted channel, the vague nature of my initial query enough for her to understand the gravity of the situation. Our meetings were clandestine affairs, conducted in the hushed corners of dimly lit coffee shops across the city, far from the prying eyes of Manhattan's financial district, over lukewarm lattes and stale pastries. I would hand her encrypted drives containing the data Marcus had retrieved, alongside my own meticulously catalogued public records of Hawthorne family holdings. Linda, with her wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, would meticulously pore over the spreadsheets, her fingers flying across her secure tablet, her quiet murmurs of interesting or aha punctuating the tense silence between us. Her expertise was breathtaking. She systematically peeled back the layers of legitimate-looking transactions, revealing the rotten core beneath. She identified a complex web of shell corporations registered in obscure offshore locations, all subtly linked back to both Anastasia Blackwood and the struggling Hawthorne family holdings. These entities, designed to launder money and funnel illicit gains, were used to inflate property values, disguise illegal payments, and obscure the true beneficiaries of Meridian's strategic investments. She uncovered illegal transactions disguised as consultancy fees, inflated invoices for non-existent services, and hidden accounts used to siphon off profits from shell companies that supposedly partnered with Meridian. The lines between Anastasia's personal wealth, Meridian's corporate funds, and the Hawthorns' desperate business ventures blurred into a single, grotesque entity of fraud. The shocking scale of it all left me cold. This wasn't just about covering up an affair. It was a full-blown financial conspiracy, a brazen exploitation of Meridian's resources, orchestrated by my boss and facilitated by my husband's family. My initial anger deepened into a chilling resolve. The fact that my own position as compliance director, the very role designed to prevent such malfeasance, was being actively undermined by those I trusted most, was an insult that transcended personal betrayal. They had not only stolen my husband and my peace of mind, but they had also desecrated my professional integrity. Together, Linda and I began building a meticulously detailed timeline. We cross-referenced the dates of Cody and Anastasia's overlapping travel and suspicious expenses with the dates of specific financial irregularities. Large wire transfers to shell corporations, the establishment of new offshore accounts, the sudden approval of dubious vendor contracts. Every piece of evidence fit together, forming an irrefutable narrative of their criminal enterprise. The numbers didn't lie. They screamed, echoing the silent betrayal that had shattered my world. And now, they were preparing to scream their downfall. The sheer magnitude of the fraud, laid bare by Linda's meticulous work, transformed my quest for justice into something far more intricate than mere financial retribution. While the paper trails and digital breadcrumbs were damning, a criminal case, especially one involving a prominent family and a powerful CEO, demanded more than just figures and dates. It demanded direct testimony, the uncomfortable confessions of those who had willingly participated in the charade. And for that, I had to turn my gaze back to the Hawthorns themselves, specifically to the one who had always seemed the least invested in their deceitful enterprises. James, Cody's younger brother. James, a year younger than Cody, had always been the quieter, more contemplative one, pursuing a modest career in graphic design. Rather than joining the cutthroat world of Hawthorne family holdings, he'd often seemed uncomfortable at the family's more ostentatious gatherings, his eyes frequently darting to me with an almost apologetic glint. He was the family's soft spot, a trait I now intended to exploit. My approach to James was carefully calculated. I didn't accuse, I merely expressed concern. A casual coffee invitation, far from the prying eyes of the family. He arrived looking nervous, fidgeting with his cup. "James," I began, my voice soft, almost regretful. "I've been trying to understand what happened. Cody. And the family. Why?" His gaze dropped. The words tumbled out of him, a torrent of reluctant truths. He spoke of the immense pressure from Eleanor and William, the constant fear of their failing real estate ventures collapsing. Anastasia Blackwood had been presented as a lifeline, a powerful figure who could inject capital and prestige into their dying enterprise. Cody, always eager to please, had been the designated intermediary, willing to sacrifice anything, including our marriage, for the family's financial salvation. James admitted he'd known about the affair for months, overhearing hushed conversations, witnessing clandestine meetings. He'd been told to keep silent, to support the family. His confession was riddled with guilt, a quiet admission of complicity born not of malice, but of fear and familial coercion. He truly believed he was helping Cody save the family. Patricia, Cody's sister, was a tougher nut to crack. Initially, her responses to my outreach were hostile, filled with accusatory jabs about my supposed corporate ambition and how I had failed to understand the family's struggles. Her loyalty to her parents and brother was fierce, almost fanatic. But I knew her vulnerabilities. Patricia had always prided herself on being the smart one, the ethical one, despite her outward devotion to the family. I decided to send her an anonymized summary of Linda's findings, a glimpse into the shell corporations and the staggering sums being siphoned off Meridian. I included no names, no accusations, just the cold, hard numbers and the intricate web of deceit. The next day, Patricia called. Her voice was trembling, stripped of its usual bravado. We met at a neutral location, her face pale, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. She hadn't just cracked, she had shattered. The sheer scale of the fraud, presented in undeniable financial terms, had broken through her carefully constructed denial. She corroborated James's story, confirming Eleanor and William's active orchestration of the scheme, their ruthless determination to use Anastasia's influence and Meridian's resources, regardless of the ethical cost. They had manipulated Cody, promised him a future free of financial worry, and made him believe that my role was simply an obstacle to their grand design. She even confirmed their plans to coerce me into accepting a severance package, silencing me quietly. The moral dilemma was stark. These were people I had shared Christmases with, mourned losses with, celebrated joys with, but their calculated greed, their willingness to sacrifice my happiness, my career, my very integrity, for their failing business, eclipsed any lingering affection. They weren't misguided, they were culpable. My resolve hardened. During these meetings, discreetly tucked away in my handbag, a voice recorder captured every whispered confession, every painful admission. I knew these recordings might be legally tricky, but they served as an invaluable safeguard, a raw, unfiltered account of their complicity. They were my insurance, my undeniable proof of their involvement, should they try to recant. The emotional toll of these encounters was immense. Seeing the true colors of people I had once considered family, hearing their justifications, their attempts to shift blame, left me with a hollow ache. It was a grief for a past that had been a lie, a sorrow for the innocent trust I had so freely given. Yet, with each confession, with each new piece of evidence confirming their depths of betrayal, the cold resolve within me intensified. The shattered pieces of my world were being painstakingly reassembled, not into the fragile life I once had, but into an unbreakable weapon, forged in the fires of their deceit. The weapon was nearing completion. What had begun as disparate fragments, Marcus's digital trails, Linda's intricate financial forensics, and the reluctant, guilt-ridden confessions of James and Patricia, now coalesced under my relentless focus. My war room hummed with a different kind of energy, no longer just for discovery, but for assembly, for the meticulous forging of an unassailable case. Each piece, however seemingly small, was a vital cog in the machinery of their downfall, and I worked tirelessly, fueled by an almost surgical precision. I spread out the collected evidence. The incriminating digital trails Marcus had uncovered, Linda's dense spreadsheets illuminating their financial machinations, and my transcribed notes from the Hawthorns, detailing their complicity. Every line, every number, every damning word was cross-referenced, verified and re-verified, ensuring an unassailable foundation. My background as a compliance director, a role I had once cherished, now became my most potent weapon. I applied my deep understanding of corporate fraud, SEC regulations, and legal precedents to weave their scattered deceits into an irrefutable narrative. I framed the accusations with precision, pinpointing specific regulatory breaches and flagrant violations of Meridian's internal code of conduct. The evidence was structured to be both legally sound and emotionally devastating, crafting a story of calculated deceit that would resonate not just in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion, with the undeniable authority of an expert witness. During these weeks, I maintained a chillingly composed facade. At the office, I performed my transition duties with professional detachment, ensuring no one suspected the inferno raging beneath my calm exterior. I attended meetings, replied to emails, and even exchanged polite pleasantries with colleagues, all while secretly finalizing the intricate blueprint of their destruction. This strategic timing was paramount. I needed them to remain complacent, confident in their perceived victory, unaware that I was merely biding my time, gathering the final, crushing pieces of the puzzle. Every casual conversation, every innocuous observation, became another data point in my grand strategy. The fear, the raw, visceral pain of betrayal that had initially threatened to paralyze me, had completely transmuted. It wasn't gone, it had simply reshaped itself, forging into a potent, unwavering power. Each confirmed piece of evidence, each undeniable proof of their culpability, chipped away at the last vestiges of my victimhood, replacing it with a steely, almost exhilarating sense of control. I wasn't reacting. I was acting. I wasn't merely surviving. I was orchestrating. The thought of their faces, their shock, their inevitable downfall, no longer brought a bitter satisfaction, but a quiet, profound sense of justice earned. The culmination of these tireless efforts was the creation of the final document, a comprehensive, meticulously prepared report. It wasn't just a collection of facts. It was a narrative masterpiece of betrayal, detailing in stark chronological order the entire interconnected conspiracy, from the affair between Cody and Anastasia to the intricate financial fraud, the shell corporations, and the siphoning of Meridian's resources, to the Hawthorne family's involvement and desperate greed. Every facet of their deceit was laid bare. This report, my magnum opus of retribution, was ready. It was an arsenal for justice, primed and waiting to be unleashed. The completion of my report marked not an end, but the precise moment I understood the battlefield had chosen itself. They, oblivious to the finely honed blade I now possessed, were already laying out the red carpet for their own public execution. The invitations, crisp and elegantly embossed, arrived a week after my report was finalized, requesting my presence at my own 39th birthday celebration, a lavish affair in their opulent Manhattan penthouse. The sheer audacity of it, planning a party to commemorate my time's birth, while expecting me to quietly accept the death of my life, was staggering. It wasn't a gesture of reconciliation. It was a triumphant display, a final, public coronation of their victory, designed to showcase my subdued acceptance of my new, diminished reality. They believed they were offering me a graceful exit, a softened humiliation. Instead, they had inadvertently gifted me the perfect stage. My birthday, traditionally a day of personal celebration and renewal, would now be transformed into a theatrical arena for accountability. It was a day for endings, yes, but for their times endings. The irony was exquisite. They had chosen the date, the venue, the guest list, every element of their own undoing. Their penthouse, the very symbol of their ill-gotten gains and false pretense, would bear witness to their fall. The symbolic weight of it all settled over me, chilling and exhilarating. This wasn't just about revealing a betrayal. It was about reclaiming a sacred day, twisting their celebratory moment into their deepest shame. My war room shifted its focus from assembly to strategy. Every detail of the reveal was meticulously planned, like orchestrating a complex, high-stakes operation. The personalized envelope, unassuming yet pregnant with significance, became my primary prop. Within it, I would place the abridged, damning summary of my full report, a concise and irrefutable indictment, designed to be easily digestible by a shocked audience. I practiced my speech in the quiet of my bedroom, refining each word, each pause, ensuring my delivery would be calm, authoritative, and utterly devoid of overt rage. It wasn't about shouting. It was about stating facts, cold and unyielding, letting the truth dismantle them piece by painful piece. The precise moment of exposure was critical. Not too early, not too late, but at the zenith of their smug satisfaction, when the champagne flowed freely, and their smiles were at their widest. Throughout this meticulous preparation, I maintained discreet, encrypted contact with Janet Chin, the SEC investigator. I outlined the scope of the fraud, highlighted the key players, and explained the public nature of the impending reveal. She, understanding the dramatic implications and the media frenzy it would likely cause, assured me that her team would be prepared to act swiftly and decisively once the storm broke. We established a protocol, a signal that would set the legal wheels in motion immediately after the public unveiling, ensuring there would be no escape, no time for them to mitigate the damage. The law would follow my pronouncement with unwavering force. The weeks leading up to the party were a masterclass in emotional subterfuge. I moved through my days, a ghost of my former self, engaging in superficial pleasantries, answering polite inquiries about my transition, all while my mind raced, meticulously rehearsing every possible scenario. I attended family dinners at the Hawthornses, endured Eleanor's cloying solicitousness, and even sat across from Cody, forcing a brittle smile, as they discussed the party details, blissfully unaware of the inferno I was about to unleash. Every forced laugh felt like a betrayal of my own pain. Every polite nod a concession to their delusion. The sheer cognitive dissonance of it all was draining. A constant battle against the urge to scream the truth, to shatter the illusion prematurely. Yet, each time the weariness threatened to set in, I would recall the image of Cody's bare hand, Anastasia's predatory sneer, and the collective indifference of his family. The memory, fresh and raw, would reignite the fire of my purpose, hardening my resolve. The facade was exhausting, an arduous performance, but it was essential. They needed to believe they had won, for their downfall to be truly spectacular. My birthday was no longer about me, it was about them, and the painful lesson they were about to receive. The eve of my 39th birthday, a date that once held simple joy, now hung heavy with a potent brew of anxiety and anticipation, tempered by a chilling calm. It felt less like the night before a celebration, and more like the quiet prelude to a storm I alone was about to unleash. That evening, I sought the uncomplicated comfort of Marie, my college friend, for a quiet dinner at a small Italian place in Queens, far from the polished facades of Manhattan. Her unwavering presence had been a silent anchor throughout the preceding months of carefully constructed deception. We spoke of my supposed transition from Meridian, of new career possibilities, of vague plans for travel, A carefully curated narrative that kept the explosive truth safely hidden. Marie, perceptive as ever, noted my unusual tranquility, mistaking it for acceptance. "You seem at peace, Sierra," she observed, a slight furrow in her brow. "It suits you." I offered a small, enigmatic smile, letting her believe what she needed to. My peace was a different kind. One forged in the fires of impending justice. Back in the quiet solitude of my apartment, my war room called to me. The evidence, my meticulously crafted arsenal, lay spread across the desk for one last, exhaustive review. Every digital trail Marcus had uncovered, every illicit transaction Linda had unearthed, every whispered confession from James and Patricia, I reread, re-verified, ensuring no detail, however small, could be challenged. The comprehensive report I had prepared, now bound neatly, was a monument to their deceit and my unwavering resolve. It was perfect, irrefutable, a testament to their downfall. A brief, chilling flicker of doubt pierced through my steely resolve. Was this too far? Was this cold, calculated revenge truly justice, or simply another form of destruction? The enormity of what I was about to do, the sheer scale of the lives I would irrevocably alter, momentarily weighed on me. The innocent guests who would bear witness, the public spectacle, it felt almost barbaric. But then, the phantom weight of Cody's bare hand on Anastasia's sofa, the condescending pity in Eleanor's eyes, the casual dismantling of my life for their greed, it solidified my purpose. Doubt evaporated, leaving only the fierce burn of righteous certainty. This wasn't just revenge, it was an act of profound self-preservation, a reclamation of my integrity. They had chosen this path, not I. With steady hands, I retrieved the unassuming, cream-colored envelope. It held not a birthday card, but a concise summary of their undoing, a testament to their hubris, designed to be easily read in the ensuing chaos. I carefully folded the document, the crisp paper a stark contrast to the rotten truths it contained, and sealed it with a deliberate press of my thumb. Within this ordinary paper, their fate was sealed. Hours bled into the night as I mentally rehearsed the scene. The moment I would walk into their opulent penthouse, the very air thick with their false smiles, the exact inflection of my voice as I delivered my truth, calm and unwavering. The precise second the envelope would change hands, a quiet detonation. I imagined their faces, Cody's confusion giving way to dawning horror, Anastasia's predatory gaze dissolving into panicked denial, Eleanor's performative grief twisting into genuine terror. I envisioned William's fury, Patricia's stunned silence, James's inevitable, heartbroken resignation. Each expected reaction, each emotional fallout I played through in my mind, steeling myself against the storm I was about to create. I would not flinch. I would not break. Tomorrow, their reign of deceit would end, and my new life would truly begin. The hum of cultured chatter and the clinking of crystal glasses enveloped me the moment the elevator doors parted, ushering me into the opulent Manhattan penthouse. This sprawling sanctuary of the Hawthorns, a monument to their supposed success, was indeed the very place Anastasia had first introduced me to Cody all those years ago. Now, it was transformed into the meticulously chosen stage for their judgment. A glittering cage for their public reckoning. Faces from Manhattan's elite society swirled around me. A tableau of designer gowns and bespoke suits. The Hawthorns moved among them, their smiles stretched thin and false, radiating a brittle cheer that masked their calculated indifference. Anastasia, resplendent in a shimmering midnight blue gown, her eyes gleaming with a predatory satisfaction, caught my gaze from across the room. She offered a subtle, triumphant tilt of her head, completely unaware of the precise, elegant trap she had walked into. My composure was absolute, a perfect mask over the tempest brewing within. I greeted guests with an air of quiet determination, my hands steady as I accepted a glass of champagne. Each polite exchange, each nod of acknowledgement, was a silent affirmation of my control. I drifted through the crowd, a phantom of my former self, observing, waiting. The air grew thick with anticipation as the evening progressed, leading inevitably to the focal point of any such celebration, the birthday toast. Cody, ever the polished host, approached me with a practiced smile, a champagne flute raised in a gesture of faux intimacy. His eyes held a peculiar mix of forced charm and veiled unease, perhaps sensing an undercurrent of tension he couldn't quite pinpoint. As he leaned in, ready to offer platitudes about my future endeavors and new beginnings, I met his gaze directly. My smile was serene, almost beatific. Without a word, I slipped the unassuming cream-colored envelope from my clutch and placed it squarely into his outstretched hand, a symbolic return of his betrayal. His brow furrowed in confusion, the practiced smile dissolving. He glanced at the envelope, then back at me, a question forming on his lips. Before he could voice it, his eyes dropped to the neatly typed summary within. The color drained from his face, replaced by a ghastly pallor. His jaw went slack. The word SEC seemed to brand itself onto his forehead, followed by fraud and conspiracy. His breath hitched, a strangled gasp, and then pure, unadulterated terror washed over his features as his eyes darted from the damning document to me, then frantically around the room. He swayed slightly, the champagne flute almost slipping from his trembling fingers. He had read enough. He understood. A guttural cry, sharper than any glass breaking, ripped through the air. Anastasia, who had been watching us, had seen Cody's reaction. Her triumphant glare dissolved, her face contorting into a mask of panic denial as she surged forward. Eleanor's carefully constructed composure fractured into a high-pitched shriek, a sound of genuine primal terror, as William, his face crimson with fury, bellowed Cody's name. Whispers erupted, then gasps, as the implications rippled through the stunned crowd. Heads turned, murmurs intensified, and all eyes fixed on the epicenter of the unraveling. Some guests looked horrified, others scandalized, and a select few, those who had perhaps suffered at the Hawthorns' hands, wore a flicker of grim, secret satisfaction. Cody, frozen in place, stared at me, his eyes pleading, accusing, utterly lost. I let the chaos swirl around me, a deliberate storm I had unleashed. My voice, when I finally spoke, cut through the din, calm and clear, amplified by the sudden, expectant silence that fell over the room. "Thank you all for celebrating my 39th birthday tonight," I began, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, lingering briefly on each of the Hawthorns and Anastasia. "But this isn't just a celebration, it's an unveiling." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. For months, my husband, Cody Hawthorne, and his family Eleanor, William, and Patricia have conspired with my boss, Anastasia Blackwood, to orchestrate an elaborate scheme of corporate fraud and financial illicit gain, using Meridian Enterprises' resources and my own position as compliance director. I held up a copy of the abridged report. This document, which Cody now holds, details their intricate web of shell corporations, laundered money, and the systematic exploitation of my former company. It also details the affair between Cody and Anastasia, which served as the foundation of their criminal enterprise. My voice remained steady, unwavering. "I have provided irrefutable evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Department of Justice is also fully apprised." Just as Anastasia, recovering from her initial shock, began her desperate, frantic denials, attempting to spin a narrative of a vengeful, disgruntled employee, the heavy doors of the penthouse swung open once more. This time the arrival was unmistakable. Janet Chin, her face grave and resolute, stood framed in the doorway, flanked by a team of SEC investigators and several uniformed NYPD officers. Their presence validated every word I had spoken, giving my calm pronouncements the undeniable force of the law. Janet Chin made direct eye contact with me, a silent nod of acknowledgement passing between us. The officers moved swiftly, purposefully, towards the Hawthorns and Anastasia, their movements precise, their expressions unyielding. The clink of handcuffs, clear and sharp in the sudden horrified silence, punctuated the final devastating act of their downfall. The storm I had unleashed ripped through the city with the speed of a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. By morning, the headlines screamed from every tabloid, every financial news outlet, and every online forum: Manhattan's elite exposed. Meridian CEO and prominent family implicated in massive fraud. Birthday party betrayal. Whistleblower uncovers multi-million-dollar conspiracy. Hawthorne dynasty crumbles. Shocking arrests rock financial world. The elegant penthouse party had become a public spectacle. The whispers of the night before transformed into a deafening roar of outrage and scandal. My name, Sierra, was interwoven with theirs. Not as a victim, but as the architect of their unmasking. Anastasia Blackwood. Once the untouchable Queen of Meridian, was suspended within hours of her arrest, followed swiftly by her formal indictment on multiple counts of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The SEC investigation escalated into a full-blown federal inquiry, and the media delightedly detailed how Meridian Enterprises, under Anastasia's visionary leadership, was facing unprecedented fines and a monumental overhaul of its entire corporate governance. The company's stock plummeted, stakeholders demanded answers, and her carefully constructed empire began to crumble under the weight of her avarice. For the Hawthorne family, the fall was even more precipitous and complete. Their assets, the lavish penthouse, the sprawling Long Island estate, the luxury vehicles were swiftly seized to cover the mounting legal costs and potential restitutions. Hawthorne family holdings, already teetering on the brink, collapsed entirely. Its name forever tarnished, its legacy reduced to a cautionary tale of greed and deceit. Eleanor's performative grief gave way to genuine despair, her meticulously curated social standing dissolving into public scorn. William's fury was replaced by the hollow resignation of a man who had gambled everything and lost. Patricia, who had once prided herself on being the ethical one, now faced the very public condemnation of her family's illicit actions, her own reputation shredded by their association. And Cody, my husband, the charming and ambitious man who had once been my sanctuary, became a pariah. He was stripped of his financial licenses, blacklisted from the industry he had so desperately sought to conquer, and faced a battery of criminal charges. His dreams, his future, his entire life as he knew it, were utterly destroyed. There was no joy in witnessing his downfall, only a profound, almost clinical understanding that this was the inevitable consequence of his choices. He had traded my trust, our marriage, and his integrity for a fleeting promise of financial security, and the price was everything. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of emotional exhaustion, interspersed with sharp pangs of profound vindication. The raw pain of betrayal still lingered, a phantom ache, but it was now eclipsed by a quiet, unwavering sense of justice. There was no triumphant gloating, no wild celebration on my part. Instead, a deep, settling calm took root, a testament to the fact that I had not allowed their actions to define me, but rather had risen from the ashes they created. Navigating the complex legal proceedings was arduous. I spent weeks, sometimes months, in conference rooms, providing detailed testimonies to Janet Chin and her team, reiterating the timeline of fraud, connecting the digital breadcrumbs, explaining the intricate financial schemes that Linda Garrison had so brilliantly unearthed. My meticulous report became the backbone of their case, and my expertise as a compliance director proved invaluable in dissecting the defense's often desperate attempts to obfuscate the truth. It was draining, mentally and emotionally, but with each session, I felt the scales of justice tilting, slowly but surely, in the right direction. Amidst the chaos of corporate investigations and criminal indictments, the divorce proceedings from Cody were a surprisingly liberating experience. There were no protracted battles over assets. His were largely gone, and mine were clearly separate. The legal dissolution of our marriage felt not like an ending, but a final, cleansing severing of ties that had long been rotten. It was the closing of a painful chapter, a definitive step towards reclaiming my independence, unburdened by the ghosts of a life that was never truly mine. The ink drying on those papers felt lighter than any burden I had carried, a quiet promise of freedom finally fulfilled. With the legal entanglement finally severed, a new kind of liberation arrived in the form of substantial financial compensation. The divorce settlement, though largely symbolic given Cody's ruin, still yielded a portion of what little remained, but it was the significant whistleblower reward from the Securities and Exchange Commission that truly reshaped my future. The magnitude of the sum, a direct result of the financial fraud I had uncovered at Meridian Enterprises, was staggering. It wasn't just money, it was vindication, a tangible acknowledgement of the systemic corruption I had exposed, and a testament to the risks I had taken. For the first time in years, I felt financially untethered, truly free. That freedom came with a profound choice. The high-stakes corporate world, once my arena of quiet achievement, now felt tainted, hollowed out by the betrayal I had endured. The ruthless ambition, the veiled deceptions, the constant vigilance against ethical compromise, it all seemed exhausting, devoid of genuine purpose. I could have found another compliance director role, perhaps even a more lucrative one. But the desire for that life had evaporated. I wanted something different, something that aligned not with the pursuit of power, but with the quiet strength I had discovered within myself. I decided to leave the corporate treadmill behind, seeking a path that would allow me to utilize my honed skills for a greater, more meaningful good. And so, Sierra Compliance Solutions was born. My spare bedroom, once my war room of revenge, transformed into a nascent office. The pristine new laptop remained. But now it was for building, not demolishing. I poured my expertise, my meticulous approach to regulations, and my unwavering commitment to integrity into establishing my own compliance consulting firm. It was a daunting leap, trading the security of a corporate salary for the precarious uncertainty of entrepreneurship. But the sense of ownership, of truly forging my own destiny, was exhilarating. There were days of intense paperwork, of learning the ropes of small business administration, and moments of quiet panic about where the next client would come from. But for every challenge, there was the deep satisfaction of creating something entirely my own, built on my own terms. My focus wasn't on replicating the corporate behemoths I had once served. Instead, I gravitated towards helping small businesses and ethical startups. These were the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the dreamers who, like me, were often vulnerable to predatory practices, to the very financial schemes I had dismantled. I offered them not just compliance audits, but education, proactive strategies to protect their intellectual property, their nascent capital, and their hard-earned reputations from the kinds of corporate predators who had nearly consumed my own life. It was immensely rewarding work. I helped a local organic food cooperative navigate complex food safety regulations, ensuring their ethical sourcing wasn't compromised by legal missteps. I guided a tech startup through data privacy laws, shielding them from potential exploitation by larger competitors. Each success, however small, felt more impactful than any multi-million-dollar corporate deal I had ever facilitated at Meridian. It was about empowering the vulnerable, building resilience in the face of greed, and fostering a business landscape where integrity could truly thrive. Beyond the professional pivot, this new chapter was also about rediscovering Sierra. The woman who had meticulously planned a downfall had also, in the process, lost herself in the labyrinth of revenge. With the dust settled, I began to invest in my personal well-being, exploring passions that had long been dormant. I started taking pottery classes, the tactile sensation of clay grounding me in the present moment, a stark contrast to the abstract world of financial reports. I reconnected with old friends, seeking out genuine connections free from corporate politics and hidden agendas. Evenings were spent reading for pleasure, walking through Central Park, or simply enjoying the quietude of my newly cleansed apartment. Marie, my steadfast friend, became a constant companion, her laughter a balm to my healing soul. The profound sense of peace and purpose I found in my new work, in this reconstructed life, was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't the frantic, fleeting satisfaction of corporate achievement, nor the fierce, cold gratification of revenge. It was a deeper, more enduring contentment, born from aligning my skills with my values. I was no longer defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I was building, what I was protecting, and the quiet strength I had found within. Each day was an opportunity to contribute, to safeguard, to empower. This wasn't just a new career. It was a new existence, one imbued with meaning, authenticity, and a serene confidence that had blossomed from the wreckage of my past. That serene confidence, born from the wreckage, allowed me to finally look back at my 39th birthday, not with the lingering bitterness I once feared, but with a quiet strength and an unexpected sense of pride. The memory of that night, once a searing wound, now felt like a battle scar, a testament to resilience, rather than a symbol of pain. I remembered the cold resolve, the meticulous planning, the terrifying clarity of purpose that had consumed me. It was a journey from heartbreak to becoming the architect of my own justice. A profound metamorphosis that had transformed victimhood into an unshakable empowerment. The shattered pieces of my old life hadn't just been put back together. They had been reforged into something entirely new, stronger, and more authentic. As the months turned, bringing the horizon of my 40th birthday into view, the contrast between the two dates became strikingly vivid. My 39th had been a crucible of confrontation, a stage for betrayal and its swift, public unraveling. My 40th, by deliberate design, was a true celebration of new beginnings, a testament to the life I had painstakingly built from the ashes. There was no grand penthouse, no forced smiles from a conniving family. Instead, it was a gathering of genuine people. Marie, my loyal rock, newfound friends from my pottery class, colleagues from local small businesses I now advised, clients who respected my integrity. We toasted in a sun-drenched rooftop garden, laughter echoing freely, unburdened by deceit. There was no pretense, only authentic connection and heartfelt joy. In that joyous atmosphere, I understood a truth far more profound than any legal victory. The greatest revenge, I realized, was not their downfall, spectacular as it had been. It was my own flourishing. It was finding peace where they had sought to sow chaos, building meaning where they had left ruin, and cultivating genuine connections where they had offered only hollow pretense. Their arrests, their bankruptcies, their public shaming, those were merely consequences, the inevitable unraveling of their own making. My true victory lay in the quiet satisfaction of a morning spent helping a struggling artisan navigate complex permitting, in the sincere thanks of a young entrepreneur I'd shielded from a predatory contract, in the simple, uncomplicated warmth of shared laughter with people who saw and valued the real me. This journey, from profound betrayal to purposeful reconstruction, had etched a powerful message into my soul, one of resilience, of unwavering integrity, and of finding an even deeper purpose after profound heartbreak. They had tried to break me, to diminish me, to make me a casualty of their greed. Instead, they had inadvertently awakened a dormant strength, a conviction that my values were not negotiable, and my professional ethics, far from being a weakness, were my greatest power. I now live a life of authenticity, where every action, every decision, aligns with the core values I had once fought to uphold within a corrupt system. There are no more facades, no more compromises, no more stifled truths. My work at Sierra Compliance Solutions isn't just a career. It's an extension of who I am. A guardian of fairness. A champion for the ethical. A beacon for those navigating the treacherous waters of the business world. The whispers of the past, the memories of their deceit, no longer haunt me. They serve as a quiet reminder of how far I've come, and how much stronger I've become. The beast they stirred within me was not one of destruction but of rebirth, and I embraced its enduring power.